You can absolutely run your own Telegram setup, your own proxy on a VPS, your own accounts on your own devices. No provider in the loop. The real question isn't can you, it's should you, and the honest answer depends entirely on how much those accounts are worth to you and how much your time is worth. This video lays out exactly what self-hosting involves, what managed hosting takes off your plate, and where the break-even point sits. I run managed Telegram hosting and proxy infrastructure on dedicated hardware in Singapore. So I have an obvious bias and I'm going to be straight about it anyway. Because for a lot of people, self-hosting is the right call, and I'll tell you when. The goal here is to help you pick correctly, not to push you toward the paid option when you don't need it. The worst outcome isn't choosing one over the other. It's choosing managed when a VPS would have done, or self-hosting accounts that matter and losing them. So let's get the decision right. Nyovenan tikam brimin subring pibat lisi bempentinits de fitesan. So let's be abontamyam. At the simplest level, it's running your own mtproto proxy on a cheap VPS so your personal Telegram gets past the block. One box, one secret, 15 minutes, done. At the more serious level, it's running multiple Telegram accounts that each need their own clean IP and their own device identity, which means proxies plus devices or emulators plus the ongoing work of keeping all of it healthy. Those are very different commitments, and the should you answer flips somewhere between them. For the simple case, one personal account beating a network block, self-hosting wins easily. A $5 a month VPS running MTG with a facto secret gets you a private proxy that lasts far longer than any public one. You control it, nobody injects sponsor channels, and the only upkeep is checking once a week that the IP still works and spinning up a fresh box if it gets blocked. There's no reason to pay anyone for that. If that's your situation, go self-host and watch my video on setting up an mtproto proxy on a VPS for the exact steps. Let me draw the actual stack for the serious self-host case so you can see what you're signing up for. You'd run a VPS with MTG or a SOCKS 5 daemon for the connection layer. You'd need a real device per account, a phone, or a carefully managed Android environment to hold the session with a genuine fingerprint. You'd need a real SIM and number per account for registration and for the carrier IP. And you'd need some monitoring so you know when any piece falls over. That's 4 moving parts per account, each with its own failure mode, and they all have to stay healthy together. For one account, it's a weekend project. For 15, it's a part-time job. And that's the part the marketing for cheap proxies never mentions. The calculation changes the moment accounts become assets. Think about what a Telegram account actually holds once it's established, a contact list you've built over time. Membership in channels and groups you can easily rejoin. Message history, a username people know. Trust that Telegram's own systems have accumulated for that account over weeks and months. When an account like that gets banned, you don't just make a new one in 5 minutes. You lose the contact graph, the channel access, the history, and the time-weighted trust, and rebuilding all of that takes weeks if it's even possible. That's the asset you're protecting, and it's why the math is different from beating a simple block. Now the 4 ongoing jobs that self-hosting at the serious level actually involves, because the setup is the easy part and the maintenance is where it lives. First, IP health. A real carrier-grade mobile IP is what keeps an account looking legitimate and keeps it off block lists. Sourcing that, keeping it stable, and replacing it when it degrades is continuous work, not a one-time task. A data center IP won't cut it for accounts that matter, and a rotating residential pool gives you a different IP every session, which is its own red flag. Second, device fingerprint. An account that's only ever lived on one real device looks completely different from one that bounces between emulators and desktop clients. Telegram reads device metadata on every session. Keeping a genuine, consistent device identity per account means real hardware or very carefully managed environments. And on real hardware, that's a phone per account, which doesn't scale on your desk. Third, uptime and on-call. If your proxy dies at 2 in the morning or your phone drops off the network while you're asleep, the account is offline until you notice. For personal use, that's fine. For a customer-facing account or a team operations, downtime has a cost, and someone has to own that pager. Fourth, the slow, boring hygiene. Each account needs its own contact graph, its own activity rhythm, its own behavior. If you run 10 accounts that all join the same groups in the same order and message each other in patterns, Telegram correlates them as a cluster and they fall together. Keeping 10 accounts looking like 10 unrelated real people is ongoing behavioral work, not a setting you flip once. There's a fifth job people forget, and is the registration itself. Getting a Telegram account onto a clean number through the SMS code without immediately tripping a new account flag is its own skill. Accounts registered on a flagged IP or a recycled number that's been used for spam before start life in a hole they often can't climb out of. So part of self-hosting seriously is sourcing clean numbers and registering carefully, then warming the account up slowly before you lean on it. Rush that and you've burned the number and the account on day one. This is invisible work that doesn't show up until you've lost a few accounts to it. Here's the cost math laid out honestly. Self-hosting one serious account, you're looking at a VPS for the proxy, plus a real device, plus a real SIM with a number, plus your time. The dollar cost might be 20 to 40 a month if you already have the device, but the time cost is the real number, and the failure cost when an IP burns or an account drops is on you. Managed hosting bundles the carrier IP, the real hardware, the SIM, the uptime, and the maintenance into one price, and the failure modes become someone else's problem. For us, that's around $99 a month for a single account on dedicated Singapore hardware, with bulk pricing for more. So where's the break even? Roughly here. If you're running 1 or 2 accounts for personal use and an occasional outage doesn't hurt, self-host. The savings are real and the upkeep is light. If you're running accounts that are customer-facing, that represent a business relationship, or that would genuinely cost you to lose, the insurance value of managed hosting passes the cost very quickly, because one prevented ban often pays for months of service. And if you're somewhere in the middle, the deciding question is simple. When this breaks at an inconvenient time, who do you want fixing it? Let me cover the edge cases people underestimate. First, IP burns are not rare, they're routine. Even a clean IP eventually degrades or lands on a list, and the work is replacing it without disrupting the account. Doing that smoothly, keeping the account on a stable IP while you transition, is harder than it sounds. Second, bans cluster. If you self-host several accounts and one gets flagged, the correlated ones often follow. So a single mistake in your setup can take down the whole batch at once. Third, on-call reality. The failures don't happen on a schedule. They happen during a holiday, a network event, or the 1 week you're traveling. Fourth, the hardware fingerprint ceiling. There's a hard limit to how many genuinely distinct device identities you can run from one desk before they start looking like one operation. And crossing it is the most common self-hosting mistake. People try to fake it with emulators and anti-detect setups. And Telegram's checks, like the integrity attestations on Android, are getting better at telling a real device from a faked one. The honest ceiling for fully convincing identities is roughly 1 real device per account, which is exactly why the cost curve bends the way it does. Fifth, the recovery problem. If you lose access to a self-hosted account, the device, the number, and the proxy all have to line up again to get back in. And if any one of them is gone, recovery can be impossible. With a single personal account, that's an annoyance. Across a batch, a recovery you can't complete is a permanent loss. There's also a hidden tax in self-hosting that doesn't appear on any invoice. Attention. Every piece you run is a thing you have to think about. A proxy that might be dying, an IP that might be degrading, a SIM that might get deactivated, a device that might fall off the network. Even when nothing is broken, it occupies background space in your head, and at scale that's genuinely tiring. Managed hosting buys back that attention as much as it buys uptime. For some people, the dollars matter most. For others, the not thinking about it is the whole value. Be honest with yourself about which you are. Is the case against managed too, because it's real. You give up some control. You depend on a provider for uptime, and you trust them with your infrastructure. You pay more in raw dollars than a bare VPS, and you can't tinker as freely as you can on a box you own. Those are genuine trade-offs. If tinkering and full control matter more to you than your time, and the accounts aren't critical, self-hosting is a legitimate, satisfying choice, and I won't pretend otherwise. Here's how we draw the line in practice. We run managed Telegram hosting and proxy infrastructure on dedicated hardware in Singapore. Each account lives on a real device with a real Singapore mobile carrier IP. The IP stays stable, the device fingerprint is genuine because it's a genuine device, and the maintenance, the IP swaps, the uptime, the carrier relationship is ours to handle. You bring your own number, the account stays yours. If your accounts have crossed from hobby into asset, that's the model that protects them. Start at telegramvault.org and use code TGYT. And if you're still in the one personal account world, genuinely self-host. You don't need us yet. There's no shame in starting on a $5 VPS and graduating later when the accounts grow into something you'd hate to lose. Self-hosting is the easy setup and the hard maintenance, and it's the right call for one or two personal accounts where an outage doesn't cost you. Managed hosting bundles the IP, hardware, uptime, and hygiene into one price, and it earns its cost the moment an account becomes something you'd hurt to lose, because the failure mode stopped being your problem. The deciding question is always the same. What is this account worth? And who fixes it when it breaks at the worst time? And don't over-engineer the small case or under-protect the big one. Match the tool to the stakes. If this helped you place yourself on that line, subscribe, because the next video walks through configuring a Telegram bot through hosting the right way with the token handling and the webhook setup spelled out. Thanks for watching.